Greetings, dear listener. This is the Nook Podcast. My name is Steven, and I strangely feel a need to explain the lack of an episode last week. I have confessed previously on this show that I put a completely self-imposed pressure on myself not to drop the ball, and yet I did. On this episode, I'd like to share why I got a 0 on last week's assignment and how I will have a more lengthy explanation coming soon, as well as telling you about one of my favorite new podcasts because I love sharing ways for you to be encouraged. All right. Since I'm sure that you were about to put my picture on milk cartons while sending out a search party, I'll give you the short answer about the lack of an episode last week. I was actually out of the country for the better part of 2 weeks on an assignment for my real job, and I brought back a lovely head cold, which is a really fun way to spend countless hours in airplanes. Among the many hats I wear, I am a videographer. And I was with a team of people capturing stories about what God is doing in Greece, Bulgaria, and Germany. Some of the stories were a real gut punch to hear, but with each harsh story, I was able to see how God is moving, and hard stories are being met with great grace. Jesus has appointed willing people to meet the needs, and I had a front row seat to see how it's happening. I'm really looking forward to telling you more about what I saw in next week's episode. Before I get to the featured portion of this episode, I do want to let you know that I'll be taking a break soon. One, I just believe that it's a healthy thing. I produce this podcast in my spare time, and as much as I love doing it and hearing about how the shows mean something to you, I need some time to refuel. The last 2 big series, Personal Jesus and Breaking Free from Pornography, really sparked some new ideas for me, and I want to seek God about putting them together well. I'd like to think that in 2 years of doing this show, I have learned some things about how to utilize this medium for bringing you good content about real faith in real time, and I want to keep learning. I have some deeper thoughts about this topic that I will be sharing in the finale of Season 4 in 2 weeks. I hope that all of this is reason enough for you to subscribe or follow the Nook on your favorite podcast app, and that you might feel motivated to share your favorite series or episode with a friend. My goal is and will always be to build a community here, not an audience. During this coming hiatus, we can stay in touch on the Nook Facebook page. I have a link for that in the show notes along with my email address. Feel free to drop me a line anytime. I love hearing from you. Okay, enough with the housekeeping already. In the last 16 years, I have lived in a few different places, and while the many moves within that time period have been taxing, I have made some lifelong friends along the way. One such individual is Brandon Hare. We connected while we were both on a church staff in Charleston, South Carolina. We eventually moved to different places but stayed in touch. And it was so good to hear from Brandon a couple of months ago when he reached out to tell me that he was starting a new podcast. I love helping people get started in areas that I am passionate about, so I was fired up to help him in any way I could. Brandon loves Jesus, and he has such a unique way of communicating that love in a comfortable way. One of my favorite things about Brandon is that he stays curious. He doesn't claim to have mastered any of this thing we call faith, but he's always watching to see where he can have a conversation about God. His new show is called This Awesome Life, a collection of stories that point to purpose. I was so fortunate to be Brandon's first guest, and he's given me the clearance to share that conversation here. Homie is a natural. I'm sure that you will enjoy his debut into the podcast world. So settle in for This Awesome Life with Brandon Hare.
Hey, today on the podcast, I've got my good friend Steve Murphy. Steve's the producer of the Nook Podcast, a brilliant video editor, and the owner of one of the best goatees I've seen in quite some time. Steve, I'm really glad you're here, man. How you doing today?
Bro, I don't know if I could start with a higher compliment than that you...
Just a goatee one, or
yes, that we're gonna have to go with the goat. It's a statement piece now. It's a conversation starter, and you
absolutely
that.
Well, normally they say game recognizes game, but sometimes it's just sheer. I don't have that level of game, and so I recognize it.
Yeah, but as long as you're aspiring for better game, I think you're always moving forward.
That's fair.
Did that sound like better. Wise or something?
A little bit, yeah. I did have way better beard game at one point, but then my wife kind of ended it for me. So that was good. Not for I did it. She didn't like sneak up on me with the clippers or anything.
Right.
That would have been way
attack you in your sleep.
Yeah, but it was more of like
woke up like this one day.
Deal with this. Yeah, I woke up like this. Anywho, well, hey man. Like I said, I'm glad you're here. I've been wrestling with purpose a lot lately, with this idea of purpose. And I think that a lot of times in our lives, in this world and stuff like that, we've overly mystified the idea of purpose. And it's it has to be this super, super niche thing. Like, my purpose is to help people who weigh 179 pounds lose their last 3 pounds to get down to 176 pounds while wearing red shoes in the gym.
Right.
Like, it's too much, right? And so my belief is that that purpose is way simpler than that. And it's more about like just loving God and loving other people. And all of our stories, if we look back at our lives and back at our stories, those are the tools that help us figure out what our purpose is, or better yet, how to live out our specific purpose, right? And so one of the things I love to do is just explore random stories and figure out what we can learn about each other, what we can learn about God, and what we can learn about our purpose in those stories. So, Steve, I would love to hear one of your stories that has helped shape you or helped guide you towards your purpose.
Okay. I feel like I need to preface this story with a couple of little caveats. One being, I have been driving. I don't know why it hit me recently, but I've been driving for 40 years now. And that's right. That's because I'm old. And
I've been living for 40 years.
Yeah. See, I've been driving as long as the host of this podcast has been alive. Am I old? Yes. And secondly, I'm a very punctual person with some insight that I was actually late for this recording. So that's ironic. So within my driving, I have, and I don't know how far back this part goes, but I have terrible road rage. And it's everything about my drive. And I have a 4-mile commute to my job. And yet I can find myself so angry and bitter in that 4 miles. But it just...
And I bet you're the only one.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, there's times you say that. There's mornings that I just feel like I'm the only one that had to pass a driver's test.
That's fair.
And everybody else has somehow lost their mind, and they're all out to get me. This is the narrative in my head. So a couple years ago, and the funny thing is I have no idea where I was going. I just know I needed to get there. And I was probably, I wasn't going to be late, but I'm driving on a 2-lane road, and there's this car in front of me that it started to feel comical how this car was going to stay in front of me. And I'd get over to the right lane, and the car would go over to the right lane. And it's like, oh. Then I go back over to the left lane. They come back over to the left lane. And when it happens 2 or 3 times like that, that's when I'm convinced. This is not coincidence now. This person is actively trying to stop me from where I'm going. And I can just feel the anger, and I'm white knuckling my steering wheel because I'm just angry now.
Yeah.
Because this person is impeding my progress.
On purpose.
Yes, exactly. So another couple of minutes goes by, and the way that the traffic around us had shuffled enough to where I could make a quick move over to the right lane and get up far enough to where this car could not get in front of me again. And now it's victorious.
Right.
And you can't just let those moments by. You got to go by slowly, and you got to look over to see what sort of terrible human is at the wheel of this car that has got such a bend against me to keep me from where I'm going? And as I come up to where I can finally see through the passenger window, it's a young woman, and she looks to be about the age of my oldest daughter. And she is sobbing, like ugly snot and tears, sobbing, just leaning forward, holding on to the wheel. And it was such a moment of, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I have vilified this woman, thinking that she is just messing with me, and I don't even need to know one word of her story to see that she very well could have been living in the middle of her worst day. And here I am angry that she was holding me up at 1:00 on a random Tuesday or something like that.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel like in that moment, at the risk of churching it up, there was a conviction about the way I drive and how angry I tend to get even at the silliest of things. That God, I don't know, I feel like God probably deals with everybody so uniquely. One of the things I love about him.
Yeah.
That he showed me myself in that moment. And didn't even really have to say much, just kind of like, did you catch your attitude in all of this? And now how do you feel? Put yourself in this woman's place if you can.
Yeah.
We've all had that worst day. We've all had that really cruddy day that you wondered if you're even going to make it through because something so devastating has happened. And there's that old saying that I'll probably botch the quote. It's just like, be careful about how you deal with people because everybody is fighting some kind of a battle.
Yeah.
That comes full face right in front of my eyes. And to me, it stood as a reminder that, I need grace by the truckload, but I am so stingy with doling it out. And that's something I know I can't live like that. That goes so counter to the faith that I claim to have and the Jesus that I claim to follow. That goes counter to his whole gig. And it's something that I have to, I'm running late, the irony of that, to get here to talk to you. And I'm yelling at the guy in front of me. Dude, if you're going to make the left, get in the left-hand turn lane so I can blow by you. Don't you understand? I'm late to talk to Brandon.
Yeah. So the follow-up question of something like that is normally, so how are you doing with that now? And, it's
but isn't still that a struggle?
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that how God works sometimes, though? It's like, I'm getting ready to go talk about this thing.
Yes.
And I'm going to be the least qualified person to talk about this thing. I feel like, I have the regular privilege of preaching and teaching. And I feel like every time I get ready to deliver a sermon or deliver a message, I have my biggest struggle with that thing 5 minutes before.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that almost like a strange confirmation, though?
Yeah, it is. You have to be able to get there with your brain, with your mind. It's like yes, it is, because you get to stand up and say, like, I'm not preaching at you, I'm learning with you.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to do that sometimes because you step up there and you feel like a fake, or like, oh, who am I to be talking about this or something like that. I still struggle with that, and I think for me the funniest one of those situations, like you're talking about with road rage, is you finally get around and you go to make the eye contact and you look over and it's like somebody that you know.
Oh, yeah. And trust me, again, because I've got only a 4-mile commute, and I've done pretty good. I'm good at keeping my fingers to myself.
Sure.
And part of that is because I could very well be next to somebody who is going to the same place where I work. And that, that stays at least in the back of my head, that the last thing I want to do is get snarly with somebody. and then have to pull into the parking lot with them a half a mile later. Oh, that was you. I would be mortified.
That's when you get to really test out the biblical conflict resolution.
Yes. The amazing practice of apologizing, throwing up all over yourself with apologies.
You get to start with, are we going to be able to work this out, or should we just walk straight into podcaster?
Let's just go right to HR. You can handcuff me. It's all my fault.
Yeah. Good stuff. Steve, how could you keep that lesson, I guess, in front of you? And, I think one of the things that you said was so good was, I need grace by the truckload, but I'm so stingy with doling it out. How do you keep a grace forward mindset, especially in those moments where you know that you're going to get frustrated or annoyed?
Oh, I wish I had a magic formula for you. I wish I had 3 points. If you just do these 3 things, then it works itself out. To me, that is one of those, it's a daily thing. It's a daily reminder. It's that daily crucifying the flesh. And I don't say that haphazardly, because I know that's what I have to do. And the truth is that I accuse people. Maybe you'll find this funny now that it just occurred to me. The way people drive grocery carts, I think, is very much a reflection on how they drive cars.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%.
I find similar frustrations in those situations where I will dive into my own dumb narrative. Now it's the lady with the cart in front of me that's got an axe to grind.
Mm-hmm.
And I no joke, I feel like it's just been something in the last year where it's like, God, give me some empathy. Give me that ability to think the best, because I'm sorely lacking there. Go back to the girl in the car. Here I am thinking the worst about this woman, the worst that could possibly be. And yet, why didn't I have the thought, maybe that guy's just having a bad day. Maybe whoever's driving that car, you don't know where they're coming from. They could have just come from a funeral. They could have just come from a hospice. There's any number of things, and I don't ever want to feel the way that I felt looking over at that, where she didn't make eye contact. It was like she was doing all she could to keep her car on the road that day. And having to absolutely choose grace, choose to think the best, or at least ponder it. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe the guy just spilled coffee. Anything, because it happens to yourself when you're off, and yet you have no idea who might be judging you or misjudging you. You don't know. Yeah. And it's just something that I have to be conscious of. And sometimes that's just really hard.
It's so hard. It's funny to me, we're aware, right? We're aware of these situations. We're aware of the things that get us in that space where we don't have the grace, and yet we still don't always prepare ourselves to enter into them. I do like a 5-minute warning every night before dinner, for my family, because I cook and they're everywhere else. And so I'm like, all right, guys, 5 minutes, because when dinner's ready, I want to sit down and eat it. I don't want to eat my food cold.
Same.
It's ready. They've done nothing to contribute to this meal. All I need them to do is come sit at the table, right? And yet
one job.
And it's like, I can't get them to do it. And so every night at dinner time, the 5-minute warning started because I was so frustrated with the situation, and that made it better. But now they're just like, oh, I got 5 more minutes to do nothing.
Right.
So now I've started doing 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I'm like, hey, don't forget, here's the checklist of things you're supposed to do. Number 1, sit at the table. That's the list. And so yet I still find myself getting super frustrated with it. Now, on the other side, I went to my mom's house one year for Christmas, and it was my family, my sister's family, who they've got 4 kids, and then my mom and some other family members. There's 12 people in this house that is made for one. Right. And it's loud and it's crazy. And my natural inclination in that scenario is to just lose my mind. Mm-hmm. But but I knew the situation I was walking into, and I actively like prepared myself for it. And on the other side, my wife is looking at me like, how did you do that? How did you stay so patient through that whole thing? And
I don't even know you right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Unfortunately, that's an outlier in those scenarios, but it's like one success story, like we all have them.
Yep.
But it's so funny to like look back at that story and realize like, oh, when I prepare myself for hard things, I can do hard things. Yep. When I prepare myself to walk through a situation that's uncomfortable, I can do it. The end. Never think about it again.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
oh yeah, we're all too it's all too easy to fail again and forget.
Yeah.
What happened.
Absolutely.
It's like, the people, those bread dropping from the sky to feed you.
I was literally
and the next day,
this a little while ago.
Man, what are we going to do?
We're going to be hungry and die.
Bro.
Yeah.
He showed up before. Why are you questioning it today?
Right. And I don't know how to do that, right? Like there's so many stories that story, the people of Israel over and over and over again wasn't isolated to just wandering in the desert. Mm. That was their whole life, forgetting who God was.
Yes.
And then ending up in this miserable situation because of it.
Yep.
And then being like, you remember that God guy that loves us and cares for us? We should talk to him.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, finally. And they're like, okay, thanks for that. We're just going to go back and do the same exact thing that we just did. Yeah.
All right. Start over.
And it's so easy to judge those guys. And here we are talking about how we're the same.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and it's just that strange reminder. It's like, there's nothing new. There truly is nothing new. That to me is why I think that's why God stresses that he is the same yesterday and today and forever. Because we have this brutal selective amnesia problem that we need to be reminded how easy it is for us to shift, good or bad. Yeah. And yet he's always constant.
It's so funny because it's not like we don't understand what it's like to be on the other side of that.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not like we don't understand what it's like to need grace ourselves. And so we're so quick. I've said it out loud, like, hey, give me a little bit of grace. We say it, but we don't quickly give it.
Oh, sure.
And even when if somebody says, hey, can you give me a little grace? You're like, well, are you sure you deserve it?
Yeah, prove it for me. Because going back to another highway type thing, it's amazing to me that if you see flashing lights behind you, it activates your deodorant and you begin, oh man, please just let me off with a warning. Just let me off with a warning.
Please be going after somebody else.
Be respectful, be nice, be sorry, and maybe he'll just let you off. But man, when that guy goes flying around you and you see him pulled over a mile ahead,
yeah, get him. Yep. No, man.
Take that, speedy boy.
Yeah. Where are you going to in such a hurry?
Yeah. Hey, bro, we all got places to go.
Yeah. Low key. Thanks for getting him off the road so that I can speed now.
Clear the way for me.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. Great thoughts. Really good challenge, honestly, for me. I'm right in the boat with you when it comes to road rage. Like that's number one. I can get so frustrated in the car so fast and just, it's such a good reminder to be grace forward, Yeah.
I like the way you're putting that. Grace forward is a really good, that's good framework.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Well, man, thank you so much for being here. Like Steve, you're one of my all-time favorites. One of those guys that I can talk to after 5 years and feel like it's just been yesterday.
Pick up right where we left off. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I appreciate you and all the mentorship you've given me over the years. Video stuff, podcast stuff now is the new thing. But man, you're just one of those guys that genuinely loves to serve and support people, and I appreciate you being with me today.
Dude, it's an absolute honor. Thanks for asking me.
I firmly believe when we keep feeding our faith by sharing our wins and losses, we grow. We need a willingness to have real conversations with people who are just like us. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says that we should encourage one another and build each other up. There is so much noise in the world today. And that's why I love to share various resources here. The kind of content we consume is so important. Feed your mind with good stuff, and you will start to feel empowered to encourage others. Make sure you check the show notes for a link to This Awesome Life. I know Brandon is going to do so well with this show. Romans 5:15. May God, who gives you patience and encouragement, help you live in complete harmony with each other, as is fitting for followers of Christ Jesus. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you here next time in the Nook.
The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.